want to go in the conversation. You have argued that the American military equipment that we're sending is coming not just from our surplus, but from our substance. Now you have argued that because of the Russian experience in Georgia, Crimea, and now in eastern Ukraine, the Russian military has become the best on-the-ground infantry fighting force in the world.
Combined arms fighting force.
Okay. I don't want to put words in your mouth.
No, that's all right.
Does the Pentagon know this, and does the White House know this, and does the State Department know this?
Again, I'm not sitting there, so I can't answer this definitively. They're in a position to know this. I would tell you what.
Is your opinion of this an outlier, or is your opinion what mainstream military and former military, I know you're always a Marine, observe when they look at this?
I have the same training they do. So what I'm seeing, I'm not spinning. I'm not coming in as an outlier. I'm coming in from somebody who has been schooled in the art of maneuver warfare. And right. The people that are out there receive the same training, the same experience, et cetera. So they're seeing the exact same thing I'm seeing. And they're looking at the U.S. Army and they're saying that can't compete. I'm not, individually, the U.S. soldier is supreme. He's a good soldier, good physical fitness, all that kind of stuff. But to turn them into an armored brigade with sustainable combat efficiency. I'm not talking about one day flash in the pan stuff. I'm talking about grinding it out on the battlefield and sustaining that. They can't do it. The Russians can. I would love to go to to Fort Leavenworth. They have an army school. We used to call them the Jedi Knights, the School of Advanced Military Studies, SAMS. They have the major's course, and then they have the lieutenant colonel's course. And they always, I'm betting you a dime to the dollar that they are doing nothing but studying what's going on in Ukraine right now. And I would love to be able to sit in with the majors as they sit there and plot this out and game it out. And they're all of them are sitting there going, I'll tell you this, any Army officer worth his salt is looking at this saying, holy beep,
right.
80,000 rounds of artillery. How the heck do we begin to operate under that kind of fire? We don't have the sufficient counter battery capability to knock it out. We bring up our artillery. We might make a couple of victories. They're going to grind us down.
Right,
we got no ammunition. We got nothing. They all have to be saying this.
I am fascinated by this analysis. And if I take it to the next step, and I know you won't go where your intellect won't take you. The American ability to defend the U.S. has been weakened, and the Russian ability to engage in offensive warfare has been strengthened by the American military delivery of equipment to Ukraine. Agreed?
At the point of contact, yes. Remember this. Russia's operating on interior lines of communication with comparatively short logistics lanes. So their logistics hubs that sustain them are right next door to where they're fighting. The United States is unsurpassed in its ability to project power. Remember, any combat we would be engaged in Europe, we have to go back to the United States. We have to flow this equipment in. And we can do that better than the Russians can. So it's not like Russia's going to leave Ukraine and suddenly invade Europe. Can't do that. Russia is capable of winning a conflict in Ukraine. But the Russian military is not organized, equipped, and prepared to do World War II type deep, operations in Europe. So okay. I don't think that NATO is under threat. The notion that NATO is going to fold and the Russians are coming in, I don't see that. I just see that in Ukraine, the point of contact, Russia's unbeatable.
Is it more likely than not that the Pentagon, the State Department, and the Oval Office are getting intelligence reports that have the conclusions in them that you have just presented to our audience? Or are we still back to where the senior intel people are telling Joe Biden and Anthony Blinken and Lloyd Austin what they think they want to hear rather than what's really happening on the ground?
No, I think it's interesting to watch the temperament of the people speaking today. To give you an example, yes. General Clark is a retired 4-star general, Wesley Clark, commander of NATO forces, etc. And he has been embarrassing himself over the course of the past several months about how bad the Russians are. They can't tie their shoes. They can't chew gum and walk. They can't do this. But
he's changing his mind.
Oh, he changing his mind. Yeah, he came on the TV and he stared in the camera with this big wide-eyed stare. And he said, Ukrainians been lured into a trap in Bakhmut by the Russians, and they're going to all die, and the Russians are going to win, and there's nothing they can do to stop it. I'm like, well, General, this has always been the case. You should have known this, but you were obeying your CNN masters. Now he's actually seen the truth. And you see that with everybody. There's not a single professional in the diplomatic corps. They're desperate for a negotiated settlement because they know, they keep saying this will be solved on the battlefield. They know that it is, Ukraine loses. So they're looking for a diplomatic off-ramp. Nobody wants to see this thing through. Nobody's talking about realistic sustainability into the summer. We have nothing left to give. Nothing.
All right, Gary, put up the map of Ukraine, please. Okay, so the red area says do not travel. This is a map from some travel service, but it's a good, easy, readable map. We can see where Kyiv is up north, but more or less, it's the capital, but more or less in the middle of the country. How far west are the areas where the Russian military is beyond where the red is? Or have they occupied the next provinces that you see there?
Kherson? Yeah, if you go up from Crimea, there's Kherson province or oblast. Where the town is, Kherson, you have the Dnieper River, and you follow the Dnieper River up. The Russians are on the right-hand side as you're looking at the map, the right-hand side. So that should all be red up through Zaporizhia. And then the map will turn over where in Donetsk, where it shows Donetsk. There's a good chunk of Donetsk, the western part of Donetsk, that's still controlled by the Ukrainians. And that's where for instance, you see the town in the airport says Kramatorsk. That's under Ukrainian control. That's what's so important about the Battle of Bakhmut right now is that if the Russians take Bakhmut, they penetrate the defenses and they put Kramatorsk under risk and all of Donetsk under risk. But so there's still part of western Donetsk that is under Ukrainian control, but pretty much all of Zaporizhia and the parts of Kherson that are on the right-hand side or the eastern side of the Dnieper River are under the control of Russia.
How far west do they want to go? Do they want to go west of the Dnieper River? I'm talking about the Russian military.
Yeah, if you look over, if you go all the way over, you see where Odessa is, and then you go to the left where the yellow border is. There's a dashed line there, and that dashed line is where Transnistria is. That's a Russian, a pro-Russian enclave, part of Moldova, and the Ukrainians have been making noises saying that they may attack Transnistria to draw the Russians in. So I believe that the Russians have to occupy this southern rump of Ukraine all the way up to Odessa to secure the Transnistria region. And then I also believe at the end of the day, they're going to basically take Kharkov and Dnipropetrovsk and who knows if they take Sumy. I don't think so. But
Ukraine will be landlocked.
Yes, and that'll be the end of the Ukrainian economy. There will be no Ukrainian industry worthy of the name. Ukraine will become a agricultural-based economy with forever trapped in poverty. As I said, we're witnessing the death of a nation as we speak.
Okay, what negotiating levers can President Zelensky pull? What does he have to offer? His resistance is about to collapse. What would he or what would his foreign minister say to President Putin's foreign minister if they were to sit down with Anthony Blinken in Geneva next week?
There's nothing they can say. They'd have to be listening. The Russians would say, everything that we've annexed is ours. You get nothing back. That means you have to get out of the territory that belongs to us. We annexed the whole thing. Even though your troops are there, they're gone. Don't debate us or we'll kill you. I mean, but basically, this is not a negotiation. This is a dictation of terms. And then the Russians will say, if you want to keep Odessa, you have to demilitarize. And if you want to stay in power in Kiev, you have to change your constitution to get rid of the far right wing parties. The denazification has to be real. You can never be part of NATO ever. And there'll be other treaty related things, but it's basically the Ukrainians have to sit there and listen and pray that the Russians don't move, because if Russia moves out of the 4 areas that they've already annexed, whatever they occupy, Ukraine will never get back. That's what the Ukrainians.
All right, we have 40,000 American active duty in uniform troops, some of them 101st Airborne, others belonging to other entities in Poland. What is the likelihood they move east and engage the Russians? Zero?
Zero. It's just not going to happen.
Much longer is this going to go on? Winter is coming. It's already winter-like in much of Ukraine, but the bitter cold winter for which that part of the world is well known is upon them, or just about.
Yeah, here's the thing. As the Russians advance, and they're going to advance, there's 2 realities. One, they still are not in the business of hurting civilians. So as they advance, it's going to be a slow, methodical advance that's designed to minimize civilian casualties. 2, as they advance and they retake these civilian areas, the Russians have to bring in services to these people. These people live in devastated areas. The Ukrainians don't care about them. They don't care about them at all. They've abandoned them. The Russians will come in. The Russians have to bring in the gas. They have to repave the roads, clear the roads, bring in electricity, which means that the Russian advance is going to be slowed by the necessity of taking care of civilian populations as they move. And the last thing is, even though the Russians are probably, I think the numbers are going to be between 500,000, 700,000 Russian troops that are going to be available for this next phase of the operation. But as you expand, right now, they're in a constricted area. Looks pretty good. But as you expand, the frontage grows. As the frontage grows, those 700,000 troops not only get spread along the expanding front, but they have to secure the rear. And 700,000 troops go away real quick. So the Russians don't have unlimited capability. Whatever they're going to do, it has to be targeted and focused and kept within the realm of the possible. Because sometime in late spring, there's going to be about 40,000 fresh Ukrainian troops coming out of the NATO training pipeline. Now, that's not an earth-changing number, but it's enough to give Russia a bloody nose if Russia makes the mistake again of having too thin of a line, having overextended its forces. So the Russians have to be thinking not only about what's going on now, but what's going to happen a couple months from now. They have to be thinking in that direction. And I believe these guys they go to military academies. They're some of the finest intellectual warriors out there. And if I'm sitting here thinking that, I can guarantee you the Russian staff officers also thinking the same thing. So I think whatever we see come out of Russia in terms of offense is going to be slower than most people anticipate. Somehow we think this is going to be World War II, General Patton, Operation Cobra driving through France. I think it's going to be slower. It's going to be more methodical, and it's going to be deadly as you know what for the Ukrainians.